In this video, I will demonstrate how to reupholster a small vanity stool. My sister-in-law owns and operates a cleaning business, and one of her employees accidentally got some bleach on a vanity stool. So with this damage, she's asked me to recover this small little vanity bench, and I said, sure, why not? It is covered right now in kind of a heavyweight linen, which is really a nice natural fabric. Sometimes you can use linen in upholstery, and if it's a lightweight linen, it's not going to last very long. So you have to make sure to go to the home decor section of your fabric store or a store that deals specifically with home decor fabrics. Make sure you get the fabric that's on the 60-inch bolts, that's how you know, and get something that's sturdy enough for upholstery weight. Now, what I found, since I couldn't find this linen in this exact color, I tried to get something close. This cotton blend is a very close colorway. I'm not sure what the room looks like where the homeowner has this. She might have some matching fabric to this in her draperies or some other form in the room. So I got something quite similar in color, and the texture is very much like the linen. I'll put it up close so you can see. It's cotton with a little bit of a synthetic in it, which is perfect for upholstery because the synthetic prevents the weave from spreading and distorting. So it keeps it nice and uniform the way that you originally worked with the fabric. So this is what I'm replacing it with, and I'm going to start this project now. Next, I'm going to inspect how the piece was made. How was it put together? And I'm going to even take photographs of my disassembling the piece so that when I piece it back together, there's no question about how it was done. Once you've done it a few times, it's relatively easy to do it without the step-by-step photo process. In this case, I can see it does have a dust cover on the bottom, which is in still pretty good shape. If I can get by with reusing this same exact piece, I will, because it has the purchase information on it and the care and manufacturer. Then secondly, I'm going to look at it and see how the base of it was affixed to the top. And it looks like through these deeper holes in the corners, that's what I'm looking at here. So on the side here, there's those Allen wrench holes, but that I think just takes this corner piece, which is a brace, to keep it from wobbling. So I don't think I want to take those apart. That would kind of disassemble this whole leg post. So what I'm looking for is something that put this whole leg assembly onto the seat itself, and from the top I can see within this angled piece is a hole, and I'll need a long drill bit to get down into those screws. And from the looks of it, it looks like there's one of those on each corner. So that's my best bet, and I'm going to try that first. I've got my really long drill bit. I guess it's like 3 inches or so, and it's time to take out the screws. They're not coming all the way out. Oh, this side did pretty well. See the gap? This side came out really well. Not so good on the other side. I'm not sure why they're sticking. Manual screwdriver. And it's too fat to fit down in there. Gotta be another one. When you don't have the right tools, you raid your husband's. And I found this guy. There we go. So there I have disassembled the base from the top of the cushion. There are a couple of options for staple pullers. This one I got from Harbor Freight, and it's helpful when you have a staple that's mostly above or lifted above the surface. This little triangular piece right here goes under the staple head and pulls it out. And then this one is a one that I purchased wholesale. It's from C.S. Osborne and Company, and it's about the size of a screwdriver. It feels in weight about like a screwdriver, and it's got a double forked end that's angled at the edge, and it's best for surfaces where the head of the staple is inset into the surface. And you kind of have to dig it out with the corner and then angle it out, pop it up. There's nothing on this one that catches the staples, so I like to have a magnetic parts holder. This one is also from Harbor Freight. It's a 4-inch diameter, and I just toss the staples and they end up in here because the bottom is magnetic. This one is a third style of staple puller. I don't think I bought it at this place, even though this is stamped on it. So this one's got a little bit of a different tip. Again, it's got that angle so that you can use it to pry the staple head out, and it's just a little kind of similar to this one, but again, you kind of need to have a raised staple head in order to fit this tip underneath it. So I prefer this one. This one's my staple puller of choice, and I use that in conjunction with needle nose pliers because sometimes the head of the staple will break off or split in two, and you have to use this to pull the ends out. And just go at it one staple at a time, trying not to tear the dust cover that's already here, because I'm going to try to salvage that and reuse it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. And sometimes the staple will break. So this has a piece still in, the side of it still in, and this side kind of popped out. That, if it's lifted at all and I can grab it, I will pick it up with needle nose pliers, but there's nothing up over the surface, so I can't get that out. So on to the next one. Pushing with the point, twisting it up, and using that angle here on the edge to lift. And I try to pull it up. Needle nose pliers help immensely, so let me go get mine. So I usually keep all of the staple pullers handy and all my tools handy. And again, I got my dish right here. So the staples come off and they go into the dish. Not running around the table chasing staples. So these staples in this are kind of inset. I forget what the word is, where it's like if you drill a screw into something and the surface of the screw is beneath the surface that you're screwing into. I think there's a word for that, but I'm drawing a blank. So at any rate, I'm moving this way with my force and tension. I never have my hand opposite that in case, which it will slip sometimes and you'll end up pushing. And if you ever have your hand in that direction, well, you get the idea. So I always keep my hand behind or to the side of the direction that I'm pushing. And sometimes it takes some bodily weight. These factory air compressors that they use for furniture nowadays is quite powerful. Like this, there's a staple here and you can barely see it. They've actually used black staples in this, which I've never seen before. I've done some upholstery, not a whole lot, usually small jobs. So I'm not like a professional upholsterer, although I was a professional light upholsterer, which means dining room chairs, never recliners, we wouldn't touch those. Never any furniture that would have like exposed wood arms that were part upholstered. So, you know, just light upholstery. Also, like a window bench seat cushion, I can make those from scratch. Although I have taken some before and had to custom make a cover, a new cover for an old tattered cover. Take the tattered cover off and, working from the older piece, make a pattern to create the new piece. So this goes pretty quickly. You can see once I get this off, I've got a second layer of staples underneath. So yeah, it's stapled in 2 layers. The dust cover gets stapled on after the upholstery is finished. So sometimes I work one staple at a time, and sometimes I just keep going, working on one staple, and I don't pull it out because I have to keep switching tools to go from the staple puller to the needle nose pliers and back and forth and back and forth. And see, that one just broke, I can tell, and this is the last one in the corner. So I've lifted them all basically with the staple puller. Now I'm going to go back, and this one's just going to come out by hand. This one's still in on the sides. I'm just going to twirl that, pull it out of the dust cover. This one's split, rolling the needle nose to get the legs of the staple out. So this one's the left side of the staple is still in, so I'm pulling and turning the needle nose to the right to get that leg of it out. This one still is together, so I'm just going to put the bottom in and pull straight up, wiggling side to side if needed, and it's stuck in the right, so I'm turning to the left. Ooh, that one's kind of a mess. It's getting caught in the dust cover. Here we go. This one broke. Pull that right side out, and I guess the left came out. This one's still together, and it broke. They get brittle, I guess, over time. Another reason why, when you are stapling with your staple gun, you want to buy good quality staples. Don't get the cheap ones. Invest in a good staple gun and good quality heavy gauge staples, or when you have to reupholster and you're pulling out, you're going to run into that same scenario where the staples don't pull out in one piece. They break in half, and then you have 2 legs of the staple to pull out instead of just pulling it out at once with the needle nose pliers. So I'm at the stage where my staples have all been pulled out from the dust cover. I'm going to pull the dust cover off, and I'm going to save that because it can be reused. I didn't really tear it except right here in the corner a little bit, and I can fix that when I staple it back down. You'll never be able to see that I tore it. So now I'm looking at the innards of the cushion. The webbing all looks good. This obviously is a pretty new piece. The foam still looks brand new, so thankfully I don't have to reconstruct any of that. However, I do need to take off this upholstery work, and there's a lot of staples in here. But before I do, I want to examine it from the front, and especially look at the corners. Sometimes, like in this corner, you'll see they did kind of like an envelope wrap where you're packaging a gift. They put all this side in first, and then they came in on the outer side to make that little crease or pleat right there, instead of just kind of squinching it to where you would have a bunch of little folds around the corner. That's the kind of thing I'm going to look at. And if you'll notice, if it was done professionally, this smaller end was turned in first. It should be identical on the other side. So if I turn this in, the smaller end was not turned in first because the overlap is here. So when I do it, I like to make sure that all 4 corners look the same. So if I turn in, well, on this side it's the same. I'm going to turn in this corner, these edges first on the corners, and then pull in the sides. That's just how I prefer to do it. So now I begin the process of removing all these staples. doesn't really matter where you start. I just pick a place. Usually I start in a corner and just go around. And you see I kind of start point down and then I pull, because these staples are really inset well. Point down and pull. Point down and pull. Ooh, that one broke. And I can see they also use staples to construct the piece. So if you look here, these are the staples that keep in the upholstery, and they're black and they're a lighter gauge than these staples here, which were used to hold the support in and actually construct the frame. We're not touching those. There may be some wood that actually comes up when you have picked the staples out, and that's fine. It's not going to hurt anything. But if there are any bits of metal left in the surface of the frame, I'll go ahead and pull those, just because when you restaple, you don't want the staples that you're putting in to hit on any metal. It's quite hard to pull the staples out when they are depressed below the surface, because the point of the staple puller wants to go right into that groove on top of the staple, and therefore you're either going to break the staple in half or push it deeper into the wood. So I'll show you when we get to the point of using the staple gun. You just want the staples to be right on or level with, the surface that you're stapling into. And that not only makes for a nice finish, but it makes it much easier if you ever have to reupholster. This, for me, is a lot of work. And also, when they're not below the surface, then you don't mar up the frame, because you don't have to go beneath it to pull the staple out. So in my opinion, these staples were set in too far, which basically means lower the PSI, or air pressure, on your air compressor. These staples are just popping, which means they're cheap. And I can't, even though I've got just a couple left, my hand is pretty red, and I'm ready to move on to another tool so it doesn't cramp. And my needle nose are magnetic, so in order to get the staple off, I have to use two hands. It doesn't bother me, but if you're wondering why I don't just flick it off the needle nose into the dish, that's why. So another thing I want to point out that I'm looking at while I'm disassembling, taking this cover off, is the fact that we've got two rows of staples here. The first one was more toward the outside of the frame, and this is where the dust cover was. And those staples were a little bit further apart, maybe an inch or so. And then these staples, which are holding on the upholstery fabric, are closer to the inside border of the frame, and that's so we have a nice overlap. So the upholstery fabric goes underneath first, and then the dust cover goes on top, and the staples are hidden underneath the dust cover once that's put on. But these staples, you can see here, are pretty close together, and that's what we call ant trails. So we're going to ant trail those staples to put the upholstery fabric on. Looks like this side, which ended up being the last side I'm removing, the staples were inset a little deeper than the rest. So maybe they were still adjusting their PSI on their air compressor rather. cut myself when I'm here. Sometimes it helps when you're pulling at a staple, like that one broke, to pull the fabric off, and then you have more of it to grab. Get the fabric out of the way. Okay, she's done. Let's see what it looks like. Oh, okay, well this is a very easy bench. This is the old fabric, remember, with the bleach stain on it. This is some foam, and I'm not sure what that is. Another piece of foam for the knitting. And then this goes on just like so. A bench that could easily be made DIY. Just a frame, some corner braces, some stretched webbing, a smaller scrap piece of maybe 1/2 inch foam, and then some upholstery foam that was cornered. Sits right there. And we're going to take our new fabric next and put this cover on. Put this bad boy together. And here, my friends, is our cache of staples that we pulled. Wow, that's quite a lot. But notice how they don't come out? Because it's magnetic. Now I'm going to get ready my pneumatic staple gun. And this one is a Rainco brand. First thing to do is to put in some pneumatic tool oil. And this goes into the place where you're going to affix your hose to your air compressor. And I'm going to put in 7 drops. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. And that's that. And depending on how much you use it, if I were to be using this every day, I would probably oil it every couple of days. But I don't use it very often. In fact, it's been sitting on my shelf so long that that's why I'm putting the oil in it. And then you're going to need staples. There are different kinds and shapes and sizes of staples. This one, I'm using the Senko brand. I'll hold this up. I don't know how old this case of staples is. I probably bought it when I had my drapery workroom business. And you can probably find them online or at, I think the last time I looked was like a Granger store. Anyway, this staple box has a 3/8 inch crown, which I was calling the head of the staple. So that's the top of it. And the leg of it is a 1/4 inch. Okay, that's going to be too short for upholstery. It won't go through the fabric and into the wood with enough stability. We're going to use a 3/8 inch crown staple with a 3/8 inch leg, which looks like that. So there is a size difference when you put them side by side. The legs are longer on the 3/8 inch, and that's the one I'm going to use. And to do that, to load the gun, we're simply going to pull this back trigger, and I'm going to hold my hand behind this as it pops open. It should be spring loaded. Maybe not. Okay. Just as a safety precaution. Put these in upside down into the channel. And actually have some broken ones here I'm going to put in first. And they just slide right in like so. And then we close it up by just pressing it back in. Like that. Okay, so staples aside. Our gun's ready. We're going to affix the air hose. Now, this is the hose that comes with the air compressor. I highly recommend getting a coiled hose like this one. for your air compressor. It just makes it a lot easier when using it for upholstery work. And I take a clamp like so and put the weight of this cord in it and affix it to my table. That way the only thing that I'm working with is this, and when I attach it to my gun, it's not pulling away on this other end, but it's secured on the table like that. Then I take this, plug it in the gun, that's nice and snug, and I'm going to assemble the layers of my work. So I've laid out the fabric. It's a whole yard. With deco fabric that's 60 inches wide, you're not going to need the whole yard for this little bench seat. So I'm going to have to cut it. And I'm going to have the front and back of the seat is this way, and side to side is this way. So I want my fabric to run in the direction of the seat, front to back. So the sides is where the selvage is on the fabric. So I'm lining up the selvage edge of the fabric with the side of the seat. If you have the fabric the other way around, sometimes the weave of it will tug. So you want to make sure in any upholstery work that you do, you have the right side of fabric on the outside, wrong side in to what you're working on, and the selvage edge running parallel to the front to back or top to bottom of the piece. So I'm going to lay the fabric or the frame in. I can already see there was a groove here where this kind of fit in during the last upholstery job, and to the best of my ability I'm going to go ahead and line that up again and figure out how much of this I'm going to need. I'm going to make sure it's square to the fabric, so if it's at all a little offset like this, then the fabric grain is going to not be perpendicular to the seat. I probably don't need much on the edges because we're going to pull it really tight. So I think just enough for the frame there. Here, I can probably cut pretty close there and here. So let me get my scissors and I'm just going to eyeball it and cut here. I think that's going to be good. I'm going to give myself an extra inch more than what I think it should be. Once I can get to where I can kind of pull the tension and cut that way. And then on this side, I don't know if I'm in frame with the camera anymore, but I'm just cutting the other edge. And there I go. Done. So I take the extra fabric I don't need, move it away. Now that this is somewhat centered, I'm ready to begin. On the gun itself, it will tell you the maximum amount of air pressure, and this says 100 psi. But because I don't want the nails countersunk like I told you about before, I'm going to set my air compressor to 80 psi and see how that looks. The first thing I want to do is all of my centers. Starting at one side. I'm just going to go right along about where the old staple lines were. That looks good to me. Pulling it taut. Haha, no staple. There it goes. And the next one over, I'm going to pull really taut. Last side, really taut. And just for grins, I'm going to flip it over and look at it. And take all the little pieces off. Spread it out because there's a wrinkle in it. Looks good. Now I'm going to continue on one side. Only getting every other staple for some reason. Time to check the gun. Always unplug it. Looks good to me. Now remember, I've already done the centers, so I'm working each side from the center toward a corner. Little ant trail, staples close together, and I'm leaving some space at each corner, skipping the corners until the end. Once I get to a corner, I'm working with the fabric in the corner to fold it and ease it over, short end first, and make a nice flap for the corner before stapling it all down. If needed, trim away any excess fabric. And I keep the staple puller handy because I may have gotten too close to where the fabric will not lay flat but have some wrinkles in it. I'll just remove those and then restaple the whole thing. Voila! It's done. Now I'm going to reapply the dust cover, and I've lined up the screw holes in each corner to make sure I have it set right. I'm starting in the corners and then just going down each side, and I'm putting the new staples exactly where the old staples were. And remember how I told you you wouldn't notice that torn corner? Well, take a look. Here's where I'm fixing it, and it looks good to me. This is the last side. Notice the wrinkle that goes from where I am to the corner, and watch how I'm using the tip of the staple gun to pull that wrinkle smooth before stapling down. You could bounce a penny on the back of this thing. And now it's all done. The last step is going to be to affix the top to the base. So I just lined up the holes using an awl, put the drill bit back on the drill, and got into motion. There she is, all done. I think it looks great. And here's that old cover with the bleach on it. Looks great. I think it's a very nice complement to the fabric that was here before, and I think the client's going to be very happy.